Good evening. Welcome to the January 8th, 2018 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Senior Pastor Simeon Timbuk from Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church with us this evening to lead us in the invocation. If you would please stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Let's pray. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today your daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. That yours is the kingdom, the power, and glory. Bless the city council, bless the city of Troy, protect us and guide us in the year of 2018. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham? Here. Councilmember Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here. All present. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation to recognize January 13 through 28, 2018 as a celebration of yoga for health, health for humanity, Surya Namaskar Yagna 2018, and I would like to ask Amruta Venkatesh to meet me at the podium, and I'd like to present a proclamation this evening.
Hello, everyone.
I'm going to present the proclamation first, and then you have some words of presentation. You want me to do that? How are you?
I'm fine.
I'm going to ask for your assistance here tonight because there are some words here this evening that would probably be best pronounced by somebody that knows how to do that rather than myself. So if we can work in concert this evening, I'd greatly appreciate that. So this is a proclamation to recognize the celebration of yoga for health, health for humanity, and I'm going to ask you to, I tried to pronounce it, how do you pronounce this?
Surya Namaskar Yagna.
2018. January 13 through 2018. So whereas yoga is the ancient practice of keeping the mind, body, and spirit in good health, and whereas Hindu,
Swayamsevak Sangh,
which is HSS, is a nonprofit social and cultural organization that aims to preserve and pass on ancient Hindu heritage and culture's values of universal brotherhood and selfless service to the next generation, and to raise awareness of Hindu culture worldwide. And whereas HSS is an organization for the annual Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity, or
Surya Namaskar Yagna,
2018, with the goal to create awareness about yoga and its advantages in achieving a healthy body, mind, and spirit, and hereby promote friendship, mutual understanding, and good health among all members of the community. And whereas HSS initiated this project in 2006, and participants from over 40 states in the United States of America have participated in this event regardless of individual faith and belief. And whereas the
Surya Namaskar,
also known as the Sun Salutation, integrates simple yoga postures that, along with breathing techniques, provide the practitioner with the key health benefits of yoga practice. And whereas the
Bharatiya Temple,
in the city of Troy has participated in this event for the past 10 years, yoga enthusiasts, yoga studios, local schools, and community organizations from across the United States are committed to participating in this event. And whereas anyone, regardless of age, religion, gender, or race, is invited to include
Surya Namaskar Yajna,
as part of their daily physical and spiritual practice to contribute to achieving this goal. So now therefore be it resolved that Detroit City Council recognizes January 13 through 28, 2018 as Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity
Surya Namaskar Yajna,
2018. You're doing great. In the city of Troy, and be it further resolved that the city of Troy thanks Hindu
Swayamsevak Sangh,
for their outstanding job helping to preserve and promote the ancient heritage and cultural values around the world. Presented this 8th day of January 2018, it's signed by myself, all members of City Council. Congratulations and thank you for what you do for our community and making it much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Hello everyone, my name is Amruta Venkatesh and I'm a freshman at Troy High School, and I will be giving a small description about the Surya Namaskar Yajna. Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, HSS, announces the 12th annual Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity Yogathon or Surya Namaskar Yajna. The 16-day event aims to create awareness about yoga and its advantages in achieving a healthy body, mind, and spirit. Surya Namaskar integrates simple yoga postures in 10 steps that, along with easy breathing technique, can provide immense health benefits to both the body and the mind. Each year, Hindus worldwide celebrate January 14th as Makara Sankranti, a day that marks the change of season as the sun enters the sign of Capricorn or Makara. Makara Sankranti ushers in longer days, thus the festivity symbolizes sunshine in life. To mark this occasion, HSS has organized the Yoga for Health, Health for Humanity Yogathon from January 13th to January 28th, 2018. Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh initiated this health awareness project in 2006. Since its inception, participants from 50 states actively took part via various yoga centers, community organizations, schools, and colleges, regardless of individual faiths and beliefs, and have participated and collectively performed over 4 million Surya Namaskars. Community leaders and many elected officials across the nation have appreciated this initiative and encouraged their residents to participate and gain the benefits of an overall healthy lifestyle. This year also, HSS invites community groups, yoga centers, students, and individuals to learn and participate in Health for Humanity Yogathon. This program is open to people of all ages, gender, and races. Now I will be giving a small description about Balagokulam. Balagoklam is a nonprofit organization made to enlighten children in forms of games, which brings teamwork, yoga to control the body, and discussions to share our ideas. I have been going to Balagoklam for about 10 years and is nothing less than a family to me. To conclude, I would like to thank the mayor, our city council members, and community relations director for making this possible for us for a second year in a row, and I wish you all a very happy new year. Thank you.
It's hard to believe she's a freshman, isn't it? Thank you again. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are no carryover items this evening, so we will move to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening, which is E1, a preliminary site plan review, file number SP JPLN 2017-0012, which is the proposed Davis site condominium on the north side of East Long Lake, east of Livernois, 285 East Long Lake, Section 10, currently zoned R1B, one family residential district. I see Brent Savant is anxiously waiting to make the presentation. I will open that public hearing. Brent, good evening.
Thank you. You'll notice City Engineer Steve Vandet is a little bit behind me here. He's going to contribute to this presentation momentarily. This application has received a lot of public response, and a lot of that response is related to the review and approval process for cluster developments. So I thought I'd take a moment to give a general overview of our process for reviewing and approving cluster developments. So bear with me, Mayor Slater and City Council. It's a four-step process, and this slide summarizes. The first step is preliminary site plan approval, which is the step we're in today. And then there's three more steps: final site plan approval, construction, and building permits. So to focus on each one of these steps briefly. For preliminary site plan review, first step in the process is a pre-application meeting with the potential developer, where they kind of have some preliminary dialogue with staff to see if the project's feasible. Once they determine its feasibility, they submit a full application and fee for review. And when we start to review that, we circulate the plans interdepartmentally. We get input from numerous departments such as engineering and fire and the building department, et cetera. We prepare a report, and it goes on a planning commission meeting as a public hearing. Neighbors are contacted and have the ability to comment on the application. We had that public hearing on November 14th, 2017. They make a recommendation, it goes to City Council for approval. So notice in purple, that's where we are now. City Council approval is under consideration this evening. It's the last step in the preliminary site plan review. If approved this evening, the outcome will be approval of the general lot layout and the number of units and lots, and the applicant gets basically approved to proceed to the next step, which is final site plan review. They submit engineering plans and other documents, such as legal documents, for review. That is internal. It is submitted to the same departments that review it, the preliminary application internally. City Council eventually must accept any fees and easements associated with it, and ultimately approval is administrative. The focus for that step is the engineering design. Preliminary site plan approval is again conceptual. Engineering design really drills down to the details. The outcome is the verification that the final design is consistent with what was approved by City Council. The legal documents are reviewed and approved by the legal department prior to final, and the application is construction ready. And then they're approved to go to step 3. The reason Mr. Vandet is here is a lot of the input from residents is related to the bioswales and the potential impact of these bioswales on neighboring properties. So I invited City Engineer Vendette to comment briefly on that issue.
Thank you. Hi, Steve.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to take just a few minutes to describe the next step, which is step number 2 that Brent had described a little bit. And I'd like to focus on the term preliminary site plan. What we are considering tonight is approval of the preliminary site plan. As Brent indicated, it shows the layout, the general layout, and number of units, and so on. There are items on the plan that are not considered by Planning Commission. It's considered by the Engineering Department during Step 2. Step 2 is a review process for all of the utilities, site drainage, stormwater detention, etc., including the so-called bio detention areas, which I would point out that these bio detention areas are not a requirement of the city. They're not in our city standards. They've been offered by the applicant for our consideration, but whether or not we approve them remains to be seen because we are not at Step 2 yet. Step 2, we will get into all of those details and do a full engineering review, and to see, most importantly, to see if, as designed, if it meets our requirement that there is no off-site impact. There's no flooding, there's no water flowing onto other properties. There is no harm caused by this development. That is my job. That is my duty, to make sure that this development is designed so that it will not have an impact on adjoining property owners. Now, I can't say whether or not the bio-detention areas will be approved or not, because I haven't gone into detail, but I have looked at it a little bit, and one of the things that is lacking, that's according to our standards, is a rear yard drain. In place of the rear yard drain, their engineer has provided these bio retention areas. I'm not sure that I'm going to approve them. I haven't looked at them in detail. If they are not approved, what would take its place is a rear yard drainage system, and it would convey all of the yard drains to the detention basin so that none of that drainage goes off-site and impacts any surrounding property. So that's what happens during Step 2. It's a full and in-depth engineering review of the stormwater management plan, as well as the utilities and other things. And I would invite anyone from the public, any of the surrounding residents, to contact me, and I would be happy to walk them through our review as soon as the plans are submitted by the applicant.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
So where was I? Step 3. Might as well finish out the process here while I'm on a roll here. And I must say, for being off for 3 weeks and this being his first day back, I think Steve hit it out of the park. So step 3 is construction. The applicant would have received approval of the construction plans, and construction would begin for all public and private utilities, underground utilities, roads, sidewalks, etc. These utilities will be inspected throughout the construction process, and when complete would be approved for use. So the site work will be completed, approved for step 4, the final step, which is building permits for the homes. They would submit building permit applications for each home. There would be inspections and approvals along the process of constructing each home, and ultimately, finally, a certificate of occupancy would be granted for each of the homes. So back to the matter at hand. Davis Site Condominium, one-family cluster. It's a 5-acre piece located on the north side of Long Lake, just east of Livernois. The zoning is R1B, one-family residential. The applicant has submitted a cluster plan, but step 1 in that process is submitting a parallel plan to determine how many units would be permitted by right by applying the minimum parameters of the R1B, which is 15,000 square foot lots and 100-foot lot widths. This parallel plan yields 10 units. That's our base number. The next step is the applicant must provide at least 20% open space. In this case, they provided 37% open space. They get a 1-unit bonus for each 10% open space that's preserved. They're preserving 37%, therefore they get 3 additional units, 13 units. That's the magic number. The applicant has submitted a cluster plan that you see on the screen showing 13 units. 12 of those units are new. They're actually proposing to keep the unit that's located in the southeast corner of the property. The road meanders in, stubs, and there's a private park area next to the detention basin, and there's these bioswale detention features that you see around the perimeter of the property. One of the differences with this development is the required rear yard setback under the parallel plan is 45 feet. This setback for on the east and west sides, the houses are set back 75 feet. And to the north, they're set back 60 feet. The minimum requirement is only 45. So it's, although there's more units, there's significantly more setback from the rear yards. So the benefits, 37% open space, perimeter landscape buffer, and the additional setbacks I just mentioned. They're preserving 2 landmark trees and 7 woodland trees, providing a private park, and providing stormwater best management practices. There's a number of standards for approval. The development shall accomplish a sufficient number of those. I'm not going to read all those, but 2 of them are an appropriate buffer and/or land use transitions, and a compatible mixture of open space, landscape areas, and pedestrian amenities. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item November 14th, 2017, and they recommended approval with 3 conditions. The first is providing a detailed narrative that indicates a specific method for protecting significant natural features and bioswale maintenance. This is a legal document that would be provided, reviewed, and approved by the city attorney with input from planning and engineering. The second is increasing the width of the sidewalk on Long Lake Road from 5 feet to 8 feet, and they have made that revision in the plans that are provided to you. And the third is to reduce the garage dominance of the colonial elevation, which they did in the plans that were provided to you. So they've met all the conditions of that the Planning Commission recommended, with the exception of providing a detailed narrative. That is required prior to final, as I indicated on a previous slide. So city management recommends approval subject to that one condition. I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brent. Questions from council for staff? Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Steve. I think that was very concise and clear and made a good effort of the slides, and I appreciate what you explained. I do have one quick question, actually. It's probably more directed to Steve, and I think I know the answer based on what you said, but I just want to try to clarify, make it clear. If this is approved tonight as a preliminary site plan, it's my understanding, based on what you said, that there'll be ample opportunity to ensure that the drainage concerns will be met prior to any construction or prior to anything else happening. Correct?
You are absolutely correct.
And that's, I mean, part of your standard job, right? I mean, we
It
do
is,
this
yes.
frequently. So it's not approving this preliminary plan tonight does not mean that the bioswales are as is, and that part's done.
That is correct. They're subject to review and our approval.
And then, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. This one's not for you. The parallel plan, or let me take a step back. If anybody who owns this property could build 10 houses on there right now without even coming to us, so long as they got the proper permits and did everything according to zoning ordinance and setback requirements, is that correct?
Yes, what I would add, that's correct. The parallel plan is a by right, which means it is a site condominium or subdivision, and if it's a site condominium, which most developments are site condominiums, the authority for reviewing and approving it is actually the Planning Commission, not City Council. So if this application is denied for whatever reason, theoretically, it goes back. My guess is the applicant would come back with something that looks very similar to that and go before the Planning Commission for review and approval.
Thank you.
Questions for staff? Councilman Hamilton.
My question might be for Steve. If they would have to not do the bioswale and have to put in the rear drainage system, maybe this is because I'm new and I don't know this, but who pays for that drainage system? Is it the developer or does the city?
The developer does.
The developer does,
yes.
okay. And then that hooks up to the city. Okay.
And that rear yard drain would be a public drain. So in other words, if something were to happen, if it were to become clogged, the city would be responsible for cleaning it out.
And we'd be responsible for keeping it updated in the next
Keeping it
30, 40,
functioning
50
correctly,
years?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Steve, I think it might be best if you just kind of steer.
Unless you want your exercise. So.
Unless you're,
No, I
know you've been off for 3 weeks, but, questions for staff? Councilman Pennington.
Guys, thanks for coming up. I got a couple of quick questions. The parallel plan in lot number 10 there, was he going to, I noticed on the cluster option plan, he was keeping the old house. Was he planning on doing the same thing with both developments, or?
So a parallel plan is a theoretical concept. So in this design, I believe they eliminated the home so that they could put a straight road in.
The other question is probably for Steve, is this bioswale type option, have we seen any of that in the near past that we've been, or is this something new for like the cluster developments only?
There has been one recent development, and I can't remember the name, but there was a bio swale area incorporated into that plan. Was it Raintree? Yes. It's Raintree. And so it's what a bioswale does, or a bioretention area does, is it's a best management practice for improving water quality. It slows the water down. It allows for evaporation and absorption and some uptake by plants, and some filtering of the water goes on as well. All of those improve water quality. It's not currently part of our standards. It's not a city requirement yet. But I do recall the one case, it might be Raintree, where there was a bioswale. And for that, we did work with Lori on some language on maintenance of that swale, which would be part of the, what do you call it?
The agreement for the homeowners.
The agreement for the
documents.
homeowners association.
Thanks. That actually answers my next question, so thank you.
On that point, Steve, I think that it was referred to me today at a staff meeting that putting the swale in addition to the site plan is icing on the cake, so to speak. We would still do what we normally do on that site with all other sites that we've approved, but the swale would be in addition to that, if I'm not mistaken. That would be in addition, and was referred to as icing on the cake, where it takes the water and theoretically filters it before it gets into the rivers, the creeks, and drains into the lakes. Is that the way I understand it?
You're correct.
Okay.
It's considered a best management practice. It's sort of a pre-treatment before the water gets to the basin and then ultimately into the rivers and drains. And so it is sort of icing on the cake. It's a little extra that's being proposed, and so long as it works and there's a proper maintenance plan, we might approve it and we might not. We really have to get into detail.
But it's not taking the place of what we would require today.
No, because it doesn't show it on the plan, but we are going to require an 8-inch perforated drain pipe underneath the bioretention areas that will keep those areas dry most of the time, and any excess water would go into the perforated drain and then convey that to...
But I think the important point is it's not taking the place of...
Not taking the place of...
Not taking the place. It's in addition to...
In addition to...
And it's supposed to be a filtering system that filters the water that goes into Lake St. Clair.
Correct.
Or wherever.
And
I know Oakland County is pushing this very hard right now. In fact, they just did a project in the city north of my house where they replaced a culvert and put in bioswale as a filtering into that creek. So I know Oakland County that's what they're trying to push us into, if that's correct.
Well, you're correct, because the Oakland County has been developing for the last year and a half, 2 years, a new stormwater management policy, and bioretention or bioswales, bioretention, detention is part of that plan. Some time ago, myself and Bill and some others met with the county, and we reviewed what they're planning for that policy, and clearly there is they intend to include bioretention. As part of our state stormwater permit, we are also going to be required to adopt a stormwater management ordinance, and our response to the state so far, and along with other communities in the area, has been that we are waiting for Oakland County to develop their policy, and we'll follow whatever they propose. We don't have to follow it to the letter. We can use parts of it, none of it, or go on our own way. But bioretention and bioswales is in the county's plan, and we'll be taking a look at it for our own ordinance in the future.
My only other point is that we will make sure that whether it's this project or any other project, when it comes to storm retention, we make sure that it has no impact on any surrounding homes or development. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We make sure that there's no impact on those other residential areas around that development.
Right.
Okay. Councilman Henderson.
So, getting off the detention, retention topic, there's 12 new homes proposed, one existing home. Any idea of, is that going to be refaced, rehabbed? Is it going to look exactly the same? What's the plan for that? And then the follow-up to that would be, is there any idea, does the developer forecast what these houses might be selling for as they get them developed?
Both of those questions, I believe the petitioner's here and it can answer both.
Well, why don't we bring them up right now, and maybe you could answer that question for Councilman Henderson. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeremy Davis. I'm the project manager for the Davis Site Condominium. And it's my wife, Krista, my brother-in-law, George Roberts III.
Good evening.
And the question, as far as the house, we were looking at between $165 to $200 a square foot, depending on the style. We got a ranch home, we got a colonial, and a split, a first floor master, one also. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
What's the future plans for the original house?
The original house actually has been completely renovated already on the inside. That's why we would like to keep it if we can. It's been completely gutted inside. It's all permitted. Everything's up to code now. All the electrical. The house was built in 1929. We feel that it's more of like a historical part of the community. We also live in the community too. So we fell in love with the house when we took it over. We renovated the whole thing. The whole exterior has been refaced. It's been resited. All the stonework's been cleaned up. It's got beautiful granite stonework all along the outside of it. Chimney, real tall chimney, all granite stone. It's quite the house. So that's why we'd propose to leave it if we can.
Did you ask what the price range of the home?
Yeah, he said 165 to 200 square foot.
Depending on the model, and options and things, right? Thank you.
Any other questions from council for staff or developer? Councilman Baker.
Chanel and Milford.
Okay, Councilwoman Hoderick.
Thank you. There have been questions about and concerns anytime something's coming in somebody's backyard, if you will, about the home values, the impact on the current home values. We've had a number of residents ask that question. We've been asking it as well. And I don't know if Brent's the right person. I know there's been dialogue about that. And it's hard to crystal ball what's going to happen to home values, what's going to happen in the economy. But there is some historical experience here when it's residential development adjacent to residential of what we see and don't see. Would you share that?
Well, what I can shed light on is we had a similar conversation this morning in a meeting, and our city assessor was there, and he indicated that this development, if approved, would not negatively impact the values of the homes that abutted it.
And when he does the assessments of this development would be on their own, and the assessments of that neighborhood that's adjacent, I believe he has indicated that it's not like it's a combined view. He looks at them separately as well.
I believe what was stated was that when you're looking at values, you're looking at comparables, and this is a different type of development than the neighborhoods on the abutting three sides.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Questions from council for staff or the developer? Councilman Henderson.
I'll just add to that, because part of that conversation went to appraisals, and I have a little bit of experience in that arena. So in Sylvan Glen, for example, if you sell a house within the subdivision, they're going to use comparables within the subdivision. That's how they're going to develop whether or not the house is valued at what the selling price is. They're not going to necessarily go into a site condo and use those homes as comparables to determine the value of what's outside of the site condo complex. So those, generally speaking, an appraisal is not going to intermix those two scenarios. So one should have a zero effect on the other.
Thanks for your expert advice. I think Nino backed that up today. Councilman Hamilton?
Do you feel that the parallel plan would have the same effect? Would it also not affect the adjacent properties, or because it would be a closer setback that could affect things? Or is that too speculative?
Well, it's not that it's speculative, it's that I'm not an appraiser,
Right.
or the city assessor. So I really can't answer that. But I think the city assessor was asked today, point blank, whether he'd experienced in his tenure here, which has been a long time, whether a new development had negatively impacted the budding residential properties, and he said no.
Okay. I had another question. Will the road be privately owned by the condominium, or will that also be maintained by the city?
This road will be owned and maintained by the condominium association.
Okay. And then, so back to how I was talking about how they would put in the drainage system. Do you feel that the long-term maintenance costs of drainage and the added people in the city, 13 houses instead of 10, that the long-term cost for the city to maintain our infrastructure to support this would be more costly with the 13 homes than the 10 homes? Because I also heard that basically the property tax that we'll receive from, in both cases, will be about the same, rather because it's 13 smaller houses as opposed to 10 larger houses. So in the end, the city is getting the same revenue either way. So do you feel that the 13 homes would cost more for long-term maintenance for the city, for infrastructure-wise? If you can speculate on that.
Yeah, I'm not the person who can be answering that question from staff, but what I will say is it's going to be difficult for whoever answers it, whoever the expert is, because we don't know exactly what the bioretention is going to look like. We don't know what this is going to be, because we're only at the preliminary stage now. So without those details that are vetted through the engineering process, I don't think it's really a question that could be answered with any degree of accuracy.
That's fair.
I think that's a good point, that we are in a preliminary stage here, but once the final is proposed, we would have a better idea as to what's going on. Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Brent, could you clarify who would be responsible for maintaining the detention pond?
The detention pond, I believe, would be deeded to the city of Troy and owned and maintained by the city of Troy.
Thank you. Having seen Mr. Chamberlain as we walked in together, it reminded me of the conversation we had not too long ago.
Comments or questions from council for staff? Thank you, Brett. I think you covered most of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that several residents have signed up to speak on this item this evening. First, I'll call on Milan Jovic, Troy resident, who wishes to speak on this item. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City of Troy. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you on this item. I am here to ask you to reject this proposal. As a resident of Sylvan Glen, we find that this is a project which is a high-density project in a low-density area, and it does not conform to the character of the subdivision. I know you've been talking about bioswales and drainage, but this is the issue that I want to raise, is that of character and neighborhood. And this high-density proposal, I don't believe, is in the best interest of the neighborhood. I've talked to my neighbors in Sylvan Glen 3. I do not back up to the property. I'm off of Square Lake and Livernois. But I find that this is not in the best interest of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Joe Johns, Troy resident, who wishes to speak on this evening, on this item. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Joe Johns. I live at 270 Harwich, which backs up to the proposed property. I have a question, which would have answered a lot of questions for the surrounding areas. Why Steve, the engineer, wasn't brought up at the first meeting. It would have clarified a lot of things that were brought up this evening that were concerns. But one of the main concerns of the bioswales is the maintenance problem, because I've seen in past home associations kind of dwindle. Even though they're mandatory, they dwindle, and the funds kind of deplete. Sure, they take care of the flowers at the entrances, and that's about it. So, because the bioswales need a lot of, periodic maintenance, whereas the general traditional drainage Sylvan Glen's been over 30 years and has very little maintenance done to it. That's, and the other thing is I was wondering about how the easements between the properties would be affected, if any, if affected at all. That question hasn't really been brought up, I don't think, or answered. So that's...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, I'll call on Mary Pelicia. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Mary Pelicia, and I live adjacent to the north end of the proposed site. So my backyard backs up to the site. One item that the scale of the lots be in proportion and complementary to those of adjacent properties. This proposal reduces the average lot size from the surrounding lots by 62%. For example, my lot size is about 160 by 110, or 17,600 square feet, versus the proposed lot sizes of 95 by 70, or 6,650 square feet. The future residents of this condominium proposal do not hold the title to the buffer land surrounding the entire property. Further, the spacing between homes is reduced 40%, from about 50 feet for surrounding homes to about 20 feet for the proposed homes. Therefore, the lot sizes on the proposed site are not in proportion and are not complementary to those of the adjacent properties. Another item that the city must ensure is that proposals include sustainable design features. Storm drains, which are used in the surrounding homes, have proven themselves to be a long-term, sustainable design feature to manage rainwater. They are not used in this proposal. Bioswales, however, are designed to require maintenance forever. Without proper maintenance performed in a timely manner, rainwater will not be managed properly. Therefore, bioswales are not a sustainable design feature unless they are also properly maintained forever, which I contend is questionable. I am proposed to the cluster option proposed for this site. Any homes built there should be on lot sizes that are in proportion and complementary to the surrounding homes, and the rainwater management should be done by storm drains. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, I'll call on Joanna Darmanian. Is that close?
Very, yeah, pretty good. Joanna Darmanine. I'm the president of the Sylvan Glen Homeowners Association, and I have been talking to the neighbors probably since this first came up. I believe the first meeting that we came to was in July. The biggest concerns that most of the neighbors have, I think Mary just said it most succinctly, was the density and the management of the water. So the biggest concerns are that bioswales, we don't know anything about them. They haven't really been used yet in the city of Troy in a residential use, as far as we know. They mentioned tonight something about Rain Tree. I don't know if that's the new section of Rain Tree that's just going in right now, where the forest was torn down and now they're putting in bioswales, but there are no homes there yet. So we don't know how this is going to work. And how it's going to affect the basements of the surrounding neighbors. And that's the biggest concern that most people have. My question would be, if it's found that the bioswales are not going to work and they're not going to be approved, then do they go back to the 10-unit straight plan that they're allowed to do by right? So do we then go back and revise the preliminary plan and we go from 13 to 10 because we're allowing the 13 because of these special circumstances, the sustainable design, the architectural form, scale, massing in proportion to the complementary, those adjacent properties, which isn't really happening. So I guess that's where, those are my two main questions are, if the bioswales are not approved, do we go back to 10 units? And the other concern that most people have is the density and that they don't really fall in line with what's the surrounding area, which is part of allowing the cluster. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Chris Simanchik. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow councilmen. Could I ask a question?
This is an opportunity for you to speak to council.
Yes, but I'm finding, Joanna even mentioned the fact that you're saying the bioswales are extra, that there is going to be storm drains in the back of the property. Now, are you telling us now that is not what the Planning Commission said? The Planning Commission said there would be no storm drains in the back of the property, and that's why they wouldn't clear cut. If they had storm drains, they had to clear cut the property. There will not be storm drains. Can we get that cleared?
Ma'am, this is an opportunity to speak to council. But
Well, that would make a big difference
I
about...
believe that question has been answered this evening.
Okay, so there will be storm drains, okay. Well, in that case, the only thing I would like to say is the fact, I've been a Troy resident for many, many years, like starting with about the 8th grade. And I really feel that the plan of the city was to keep residences a lot alike as they're going, and now they're trying to fill in clusters that have been vacant. And they did an excellent job across from Smith Middle School in Sylvan Glen 3, the way they took that land, and now they're going along with the sub, and that's what we would just like to do with the rest of the sub. And I will tell you that when we first moved into our house, we had a super flood because that retention pond was higher than our houses, and our streets were all flooded one time, like 2 years later after we moved in. So there are problems with issues. And if this is strictly that the city wants to clean the water before it goes to the proper storm drainage, that sounds like a good idea. But that's not what I got from the first meeting with the planning department because of the fact of the clear cutting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ann Husan? Hassan?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello to David. I've known him as a little boy growing up in Sylvan Glen. Yes,
He's still a little boy.
He's still a little boy. Sorry, Dave. I've been living in Sylvan Glen for probably 36 years. I don't have a prepared speech. I am here to speak because I love Sylvan Glen and I'm concerned about it. We moved to Sylvan Glen because the houses were just the right size, but the lots were wonderful. Oversized lots, moderately sized houses. When I heard about this plan, I walked 2 streets over to see exactly where you're going to put this. Most of the streets that are on Falmouth are ranch houses that will be abut the new places that are going to be put up. And I thought to myself, how would I feel if I were in this 1,700 square foot ranch and in back of me there's a 3,000 square foot colonial? I would really feel like I was being closed in. I looked at both plans. Squeezing all this 13 homes in this small lot seems like an awful lot. I think Sylvan Glen prides itself on being wide open. There's Sylvan Glen 1, 2, and Sylvan Glen 3. There are no barriers. You can walk from one area to another very, very freely. This street, I understand, is going to be a closed street. I did ask the contractor if there would be a way of walking, say, if we were to go out for a walk, could we walk from Sylvan Glen through your street? He said no, not unless I wanted to pay for the concrete. This is what he said. I remember that. So as far as I'm concerned, I think for the integrity of Sylvan Glen, I love Troy, I love the progress, I love so many things that have been done here, but to me, you're really taking away the community of Sylvan Glen. You are putting a street right in the middle of 2 streets that lead into our sub. They might want to think they are independent, but they'll always be part of Sylvan Glen. So I thank you very much. I really wish you would consider how people here feel. That seems to be the idea of the integrity of Sylvan Glen the way it is right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak this evening. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? If there's something that you want to say, please come forward.
Hello, Council. My name is Mike Powell.
Good evening.
I'm the civil engineer for the project. I've been a municipal engineer for approximately 40 years, and I'm also on the White Lake Township Board. And so I am very familiar with the rain gardens and the bioswales. This is really coming, as Steve pointed out, the EPA announced that they were going to require the individual states to develop bioswale requirements. So the DEQ has now issued the edict down to the local counties to design criteria for those bioswales, and then the county, of course, will ask you to either accept or modify their requirements for bioswales. And the intent is, if you recall, back in the 70s, the big issue was dealing with the total volume of water and the rate the water leaves the site. So you could control the amount of water that was leaving each site. You didn't have to have larger and larger pipes. We've done a very good job at controlling water leaving the site. Now the EPA and the DEQ is looking for means of providing the cleanest water possible before it gets into the waterways of the state of Michigan. These bioswales are the up-and-coming way to do exactly that. Instead of having them sit in an open body of water, such as a large detention basin for weeks at a time in order to have the water settle out, Their idea is twofold. Number one, to take that water and clean it before it even gets to the detention basin, instead of waiting until it gets there. So the bioswale does that, and the intent is to remove the fines, the particulates from the stormwater, as well as the nutrients from the stormwater. So the bioswale will accept all that, and then it will in fact deliver relatively clean water to the detention basin. So Steve, I believe your engineer presented it extremely accurately. There will in fact be storm sewers underneath the bioswales. The bioswales will in fact just be cleaning the stormwater from the backs of these lots, collecting that stormwater. They're really not big ugly drains. They're only 2-foot swales towards the rear yards of these homes. It'll be collecting. Each of those basins will have a detention basin that the water will eventually flow into if it got too high. Otherwise, it'll perk down into the ground, and then if what doesn't perk into the ground gets carried to the detention basin up front. These will be state-of-the-art here in the city of Troy and all the other communities that I represent and all the other communities in the very, very near future. As Steve pointed out, Oakland County has been working on this for a number of years, and they're very close to issuing this. So this is not at all unusual. So we're really talking about, as what was presented, icing on the cake. This is a modern way to clean the nutrients and the particulates from the stormwater before it outlets into the detention basin and into the city storm sewer system. This is a very unique development in that the concept is to provide as large a setback between the existing homes and the proposed new homes as possible, leaving all the vegetation in that open area around these homes to where it doesn't change the view at all from these homes that are currently looking at an open space. You folks have had presentations before you when somebody wants to come in and do a development and people say, where am I going to walk my dog? What am I going to do with the grass clippings that I've always dumped on this area? And so the neighbors are not going to see any difference within 75 feet, within really 65 feet of their homes, because of the existing vegetation is going to remain. So we're trying very hard to provide a product that is not typical in the city of Troy, provide for an empty nester. I'm looking to sell my larger home, and I'm looking to hopefully move into a structure very similar to this, something that we don't have to work for weeks to maintain. So I appreciate the opportunity here to be before you, and certainly I can answer any technical questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? Anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, I will close public hearing and return it to the table for resolution. Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move E1, preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2017-012- proposed Davis site condominium, north side of East Long Lake, east of Livernois, 285 East Long Lake, Section 10, currently zoned R1B, one-family residential district.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Baker, that we approve E1, which is the preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2017-0012, which is the proposed Davis site condominium on the north side of East Long Lake, east of Livernois, 285 East Long Lake, Section 10, currently zoned R-1B, one family residential district, as printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion. Councilman Hamilton.
I noticed in the wording here on the proposal here that it says the base density is R1C when I thought it was R1B as written here. And I also noticed that it says they're contracted to provide 27.3% open space. I thought it was 37% was in the plan. So if we propose this as printed, I don't see the match here from what I'm looking at here in the agenda packet as it's written. Is that,
I see,
do we need to
I
amend?
see Brent is at the podium, and could you address those issues?
Councilman Hamilton has a keen eye. It's R1, zone R1B, as in boy, and the open space is 37%, not 27%.
Thank you. Councilman Hamilton, do you want to amend the...
Yes, I'd like to amend.
Thank you. Is there
change it to R1B and to change the open space requirement or addition to 37%.
Support.
Support by, moved by Councilman Hamilton, supported by Councilwoman Hoderick, that we amend E1 to include under section, whereas the base density under R1-1C would be 1B, and in the paragraph that indicates provide a 27.3% would be changed to 37%. Further discussion on the amendment?
Just on the amendment?
On the amendment. The vote on the amendment, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
That motion passes. Further discussion on the motion for approval of E1. Councilwoman Hoderick.
While you're standing there, appreciate the residents' comments and want to assure that we've been taking in the emails, the comments, and factoring it in. Our job is to represent our residents and balance that with the rights of the property owner and the developers as well. And I know we've all been working really hard in that regard, and I want to assure that. The conversation about the compatibility and the character, you know, this starts to be subjective, right? I look at this, I walk around there, I'm feeling good about it, but I'm hearing otherwise from the folks that live there. But if we were to vote this down, send it back, and it went back to the by right, we don't control what then goes on. You know, those could be large homes on those large sites that wouldn't necessarily, there's no guarantee we can match the current character and flavor of Sylvan 1, 2, and 3 because we vote no on this and it goes back to the by right. Am I correct?
Yes. So my guess is, and the applicant's here, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's got an option. Option 1 is to build by right the parallel plan 10 units. Option 2 is the cluster. He's proposing smaller homes ranging from 2,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet. Smaller homes are on a per square foot basis more expensive than larger homes. My guess is that the one existing home, the 12 new homes, he's got to build 12 homes per square foot to make the numbers work. This is probably the sweet spot for him. If he's denied, he's going to go back with the parallel plan. Again, I'm putting words in his mouth here. The parallel plan, and he's going to build large homes, probably the largest footprint that he can get that the market will bear. So you use the word balance. When I describe zoning as a balance of property rights. It's a balance of the rights of the property owner, that's the developer, and the rights of the properties abutting them to not be negatively impacted from the development. So compatibility is a subjective term. So compatibility that when I looked at it and reviewed it and the Planning Commission looked at it, it's a trade-off. There's more homes, smaller homes, and more density and more units on that property. The trade-off being, instead of being set back 40 feet from the property line and having, 45 feet from the property line, and having essentially turf grass on all sides of the home, versus on the west side and the east side, this is a 75-foot distance, so it's 30 feet more here, and this is 60 feet, so it's 20 feet more here, 30 feet more here. And instead of having turf grass, we've got protected open space, 37% on this site. So you've got theoretically zero protected open space, it's cut, it's fertilized, et cetera, versus 37%. So it's a weighing of, it's a balance. Compatibility is the additional setbacks, the additional open space, the trees preserved, enough of a trade-off for the additional homes versus the 10 that they could do by right? That's the question. Staff feels it is. Planning Commission voted 7-0, believing it is.
And this cluster option is giving us that ability to create those buffers between these smaller green spaces that are tucked into pre-existing residential areas and create more. There's going to be a different character and flavor there, regardless. This gives us our buffer, and that space and that differentiation is one way that we can look at that. Or,
that's correct.
I apologize, I'm a little bit thinking out loud as we sort this through. This is my understanding. This is what I've looked at when I've walked around there. This developer didn't have to come forward with a cluster option. He could have done by right. An argument can be made that in many ways this tucks this in there with more green space and with more buffer. And the numbers show it as well. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Henderson.
So we, one of the more recent projects that we had in Troy was, I think it was off of Waddles, just this side of John R. And the developer came in and pretty much clear-cut the entire property and started over, put a subdivision in. So we went on a quest to put together a tree ordinance, which we did, and also the follow-up to that was the cluster ordinance scenario, so that we could try to not only require developers to do the right thing as it regards trees, but also do the right thing with regard to preserving as much green space as we could, and Lord knows we've had a lot of conversations about that in the last 3 or 4 months. So those two, the tree ordinance and the cluster ordinance, are key components of trying to make the best out of situations where people that have owned properties for decades upon decades are now finding it advantageous to sell these pieces of property to developers and try to make harmonious projects in areas that might not be so harmonious. And that's really what the resolve of this is. So, as I'm listening to the people in Sylvan Glen, and I used to live there, so I understand the subdivision. I know the area real well. The bioswales are exactly as described. They're icing on cake. And if you look at the drawing there, you can see the detention pond, and our engineering department is going to make sure that these properties do not drain anywhere but into that detention pond. So that question in my mind is completely gone. That is going to be answered. That is a non-issue for me. So now it becomes, does the density issue become a problem? And so now you've got, I've looked at, I just put some quick numbers together at $165 to $200 a square foot. One of the projects that they have in this packet is about a 2,000 square foot home. That ranges from, it could be anywhere from $330,000 to $400,000 house. These are nice homes. They're not going to be a non-fit in that area. I know the subdivision rather well. These are going to be gorgeous looking places according to the drawings. Will they be a little bit tighter on a smaller scale, lots a little bit closer? Yes, but again, with the cluster ordinance, we allow for that based on the fact that we're going to preserve as much green space in those areas as we can. So I don't have the heartburn of the density, 10 houses, 13 houses, 3 more houses. The traffic issue to me doesn't seem to be a huge concern. If I've said this earlier today, if all 13 people in those houses decided to leave the subdivision at once, which is highly unlikely, you have 13 more cars going on 18-mile road. They're not going into the subdivision, they're going out onto a main road. So the density issue is not, it doesn't give me heartache, with regard to this project. So again, smaller lots, yeah. Is it a little bit different? Yes. Are they going to be nice? Yes. So again, I just want to give you a little bit of where my head's at and what my thought process is.
You also need Brent to stand up at the podium at this point?
Sorry, Brent. I feel like I'm preaching to him.
What are you trying to say, Mayor Slater?
I'm just trying to give you some ease here. If you want to sit down, I think you're welcome to sit down.
I thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. As we all talk through these things, many things that are in my mind have already been said, and many of my thinking out loud comments I've kept to myself, but Councilwoman Hoderick shared them. I too appreciate so much when you come to council and speak to us and share your concerns and your emails. And I have to say, Mr. and Mrs. Johns, your email, I think a lot of your email comments precipitated the in-depth conversation on bioswales, then created a clear understanding and allowed Mr. Vendette to come up here. And I mean, perhaps that could have been avoided, like you said, but I think it's a valuable tool. And if you hadn't have done that, we wouldn't be having the in-depth conversation on that issue. So thank you for that. I do think that issue has been clarified quite handily by the fact that is icing on the cake. It sounds a little cheesy, but it is something in addition to what will be standard. Unless that's what I've been told now by the developers, engineer, our own staff. So that makes sense, and I appreciate that. I'm intrigued by this conversation tonight from this standpoint. I just want to take a minute to say something about it. Traditionally, I think this is our fourth cluster since we have the cluster ordinance, fourth or fifth maybe, I'm not sure. Usually, the neighboring properties are coming and saying, we don't want you to build anything there because we've had this open space and we don't want it to change. And so it's interesting to me to see the evolution of this process to where none of you said anything about that. And it almost seems that you're supportive of 10 instead of 13. And I don't know if that's just a fascinating experience for me, because it seems to me when I look at it, even though, yes, the houses are closer together, the protection of and the buffer around the properties seems to be such a benefit to the Sylvan Glen neighbors that for me, that just seems like that would be the much better choice. But, I don't live there, and I have walked around the property and I've seen it, so I can see why you're involved, and I appreciate, as the HOA president, I'm currently my HOA's president. I understand that can be a very rewarding experience, and it's great to have you here tonight and to speak on behalf of the community. And hopefully you can go back and share our comments and the experience with the neighbors, and so they can feel a little more tuned into the process. But I think that the idea to have 37% open space preserved is worth the trade-off of having the denser homes, because they are nice homes. We're not putting apartments here. These are single-family homes for all intents and purposes, in the sense that they're detached and they look like houses. The lots are smaller, but you have a much bigger buffer around the property that I think many other neighboring communities or neighboring subdivisions would die to have for some of these things, because other subdivisions have been built on previously wooded lots with much less of a buffer. So I commend the developer for putting together this plan, and I think it's going to be a good thing for our city. But I also want to say I get the concerns of the neighbors, and I so appreciate you coming and emailing and sharing your thoughts, and I hope that you continue to. And if bioswales do continue to get there and there's a maintenance issue, please bring it up. Please come to the city and share your concerns as we move forward. I think the value of having that buffer is exactly what the purpose of our cluster ordinance was intended for, and I'm supportive of that idea.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
To piggyback off of what Councilman Baker had said, this is a very unique conversation. Usually when there's a development that needs to come to council, the neighbors are saying we don't want anything there. What I find very heartwarming, in fact, is that Sylvan Glen is truly a community in every sense of the word, that you're looking out for each other, that you're thinking about your neighbors. I believe it was Ms. Husson that had made reference to, well, can we have a sidewalk or a road that connects to this new part or this new development? And usually we hear the exact opposite. It's, we don't want connectivity. We don't want the additional traffic on our streets. So I'm somewhat marveling in a good way that some of your comments. And we really do appreciate your coming out and sharing that with us. We do make every effort to listen to the residents, whether it's email, telephone, or coming in person to council. And we're trying to listen to all of our residents. And I think Councilman Henderson had commented on a couple things that council has done because we have been listening to residents. The preservation of trees for new development, that just happened 2 years ago. The cluster ordinance, again, to preserve the green space, that was something that our residents have been asking for, and we're trying to put provisions in place that can support that. One of the other things that we hear quite a bit from residents is that we don't have housing stock, I'll say on the smaller end, whether it's 2,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet, even 1,700 square feet. We are losing a lot of our aging population because we don't have housing of that size, and not just housing of that size, but also housing on smaller lots that require less maintenance. And that's one of the other things that this cluster ordinance was put in place to do, is to offer wider variety in our housing stock that we have today. We have beautiful neighborhoods like Oak Rivers, but that doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the populations of maybe newer families coming to Troy with small families and perhaps couldn't afford a larger house like that. And we're trying to have greater depth in that housing stock. So for those reasons, the preservation of the green space, which I know has been an extremely relevant part of the conversation, particularly in the last 6 months, the tree ordinances, the demand for that smaller housing, I will be supportive of this cluster development. But again, I truly thank the residents for coming out and articulating their concerns for their neighborhood. I am confident that when the development is built, that you will embrace these neighbors as you've embraced Sylvan Glen 1, 2, and 3. I see it in you. Your hearts are on your sleeve, and that's a very good thing.
Thank you. Councilman Pennington.
Well, I want to also thank all the residents that came and spoke today. Chris is actually a friend of mine. We have known each other for quite a few years. Just to reiterate your concerns, so I've been doing this for 5 years now, and the engineering department that we have is, they win awards for what they do, and I trust them 100% in their assessment of the outcome of the drainage plans. If Steve is not comfortable with the bioswales with the drainage, he won't let it go through. So I don't have any reservations of letting him handle that. And as far as the cluster option, this is something that we've been talking about. This is the housing stock of the future. Unfortunately, for the city of Troy, for some people, they're not going to care for the smaller houses and closer together. But on certain lots, that's what you're going to get. On all these properties that we have left that are being built out, none of them are going to match the character of the surrounding neighborhoods. More than likely, it's going to be what this is, a smaller house on a tucked-in property with the lots closer together, or the other option is the monster houses on the bigger lots, and that wouldn't match either. So I agree with everything that's been said, and the housing, what he's proposed, these are good-looking projects. We appreciate all their comments, and anytime we get a lot of emails on something like this, we all give it our full attention, and we appreciate everyone who came out.
Thank you. Councilman Hamilton.
So, thanks again to my old neighborhood, Sylvan Glen. I went out and knocked doors and talked with a lot of you. I grew up on Falmouth, which is adjacent to this. My two major concerns are does the architectural form, scale, massing, is it in proportion and complementary? And one thing we can control is the lot size by this decision. And by changing the lot size, we're making this different than what's already there. And my concern with that is I feel like if we leave it as R1B, that is the default option, and to change things greatly, I need a very compelling reason to do that, and we have certain reasons we have to abide by, and one of the choices is any density bonus is commensurate with the benefit offered to achieve such bonus. So we have 30% more houses here. But from what I've heard from city assessor, either option, the 10 house or the 13 house, will have the same taxable value and bring in the same amount of taxes to the city. However, it seems to me it's likely that, or possible that 13 houses will cause more of a long-term demand on city assets such as the roads and drainage. So because of those reasons, I'm not compelled enough to change it. I don't think there's enough here for me.
Any other comments from council? Councilwoman Hoderick.
I was asking a question earlier, and I feel like I need to go ahead and state where I'm standing at this point and why. I'm supportive of this, and there's a context to this. We've had many decisions come forward to us over the past several years, as we've talked about. And the compatibility is extremely important. If you've watched my voting as we've had different developments come forward, there's been times I've voted something down because I didn't think it was compatible with the area. This feels compatible. This feels right to me. And in contrast, just down the road, on that same road, we were looking at rezoning, or had a proposal in front of us to rezone an area, and that was not compatible. Those neighbors wanted something like this in that area. That was the storage facility proposed by Ridgedale. I too live not too far from this. My kids had friends all in this neighborhood. I feel like you are my neighbors, and I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. How we do right by this matters. In the dialogue we've had, staff, the residents, planning commission and whatnot, we've taken all the tools we have to ensure the best compatibility there. And try to argue myself out of this, yes, and I have not been able to argue myself out of it. I think our planning commission did the right thing asking for this view of it in terms of protecting the green space there. There's going to be folks that disagree with me. You don't make everybody happy with these decisions. But I guess I wanted you to understand how carefully I've thought it through in the context for not only your neighborhood, but all along there. Councilman Pennington mentioned Steve Vandett is an engineer's engineer, man. He just, he's hiding back there. And that whole team that works there, the rainwater concerns are greatly appreciated. Glad you're bringing them. We need to push, we need to have one another's backs is what this has been about. And I have this sincere feeling that we've done that. And I really appreciate the involvement of everybody. I'm especially appreciative that the Planning Commission pushed the Planning Department for these cluster options for the tree preservation. As we build out as a city, these are difficult decisions. These are difficult moments. It's a change you don't necessarily want in your area in a small corner. These tools have helped us manage this very effectively. So with tremendous care in the decision-making, I'm going to be supportive of the cluster development proposed, and look forward to how it will meld there with the neighborhood that I do very much value. It's a beautiful, Sylvan Glen is beautiful. How we put this here matters, and keeping that feeling of beauty. I don't think you're ever going to get that direct compatibility and flow in this time frame. I think this buffer and whatnot feels right for me for the neighborhood. And that's why I'll be a yes.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Final comments from me. When you go last, everybody's pretty much said everything that you want to say. The only thing that I want to add is that I've done my due diligence. I've watched the Planning Commission meetings. I've read everything that was handed to me from the residents and from the administration. I met with Rob and Mary Policia and had a nice conversation. I know they're probably more, their house backs up to this area probably more than anybody else's and are probably impacted more than anyone. And I just think that all of the questions that were asked have been answered, and the city will make sure that the drainage issue is not a problem to the abutting residents, and I think that was the main issue that I heard from almost every resident that I talked to. There was one question that was asked that hasn't been answered yet by staff, and that was regarding the easement issue. Just to put that to rest, City Attorney Bloom, could you address that?
I wasn't exactly sure what the easement question was about, but assuming that it is in regards to the preservation of the open space, then that will be in perpetuity, so that will be something that's very permanent, and you will be seeing that document, whatever form that is. I suspect it will probably be in a deed, in the deed itself.
Right, that makes sense, yes, thank you. I personally think that the project is sufficient to meet the standards that are required to move to a cluster development. I am supportive of cluster developments. This city has been working very, very hard to make that happen in the city, and as Councilman Henderson indicated, we've been taking steps to make sure that we preserve open space and trees, and to me this is a perfect example of doing that. I don't see the negative to doing this cluster and this development as opposed to what they could do with the 10 homes in that area. Pushing back to 65 feet is just a positive to the people that live around there. I really don't see that as a negative. I think in the long run you're going to recognize that this is the best development for your subdivision, and for that reason I'm going to vote yes also. So having said that, could I have the vote, Ms. Dixon?
This is on the resolution as amended with the corrections.
As amended with the corrections, yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you to everyone that has come tonight and spoke in front of City Council, and congratulations to the developer. I know you'll make this a great project in the city of Troy, and thanks for choosing Troy to do this. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I don't see that anyone was signed up for that item this evening, so we will move to regular business as there are no postponed items this evening. First on the agenda are board and committee appointments. There are none this evening. There are no city council appointments. So next we will move to I-2, which are board and committee nominations. I have one nomination to make this evening. I would want to nominate Frank Strahl to the Board of Review for the term that expires 1/31/2021.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Henderson, that we nominate Frank Strahl to the Board of Review for the term that expires 1/31/2021. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to Frank for continuing to volunteer to be on that important board. There are no city council nominations this evening, so we move to I-3. There is no closed session request this evening. So I-4 is a standard purchasing resolution 4, which is H-CA GAC Cooperative Purchasing Program, ladder trucks for the fire department and budget amendments. I see Chief Dave Roberts is here. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Also with me tonight is Lieutenant Pete Hollinger. We're before you tonight requesting a budget amendment to purchase 2 new ladder trucks. These are replacement trucks for our aging ladder trucks at Station 5 and Station 6, which we refer to as Ladder 5 and Ladder 6 respectively. We had a committee that was put together between staff members and our volunteer members to look at 3 different manufacturers of similar ladder trucks. And the Sutphen Model SLR 75 was the truck of choice to replace those 2 aging trucks. So Sutphen has estimated a 13-month build time for the trucks, and our intention is once we receive delivery of those 2 new trucks, then we'll sell one of the trucks and keep one of the trucks as a spare, and that provides a backup in case one of the other trucks is in for maintenance, and it also will give us some ISO credit towards our evaluation. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Roberts regarding this? I know there were some questions asked by council, and I think they've adequately been answered this evening, so thank you. Somebody like to move that resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
I'll move I-4 Standard Purchasing Resolution 4H-GAC Cooperative Purchasing Program, ladder trucks for the fire department and budget amendment as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Abraham and supported by Councilman Pennington that we approve I-4, which is the Standard Purchasing Resolution 4, as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is the consent agenda. Anyone on council wish to remove a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed. Support.
By Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented in the agenda packet. Further discussion?
That was actually Councilman Hamilton. I was moving my list, but he got it out before me.
Oh, I didn't, I thought maybe you...
I saw you moving your lips, so I assumed that you were speaking.
I do that sometimes.
City Clerk, could you change that to Councilman Hamilton?
Already done.
Thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you were here on a consent agenda item this evening, they've all been approved. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none this evening. Next is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, and I will call on Jack McBride, Troy resident, who wishes to speak this evening. Good evening.
Thank you. David, or Mr. Mayor, thank you. My name is Jack McBride. I live at 2110 Mayflower. Lived here for 40 years outside of college. Nevertheless, I am here to talk about, I think, the lack of safe lighting along, well, new subdivisions, but especially mine, at the intersection of Mayflower and John R. There is currently not a overhead light at that intersection, much like there are at pretty much every subdivision entrance that I have seen driving around Troy. And I got to tell you, after looking at the, say, subdivisions built within the last 5-10 years, there doesn't seem to be any. I think I know why from Mr. Hamilton, has helped me out a lot, as well as Brian Kishnick, who has explained something about the John R. project, which started in 2005, was going to get going in 14 from, I'm not telling you anything you guys don't know, but I just figured it out, then was delayed. There was, I'm part of Bridgewater Estates.
A neighbor of mine totaled his car in 2016. I almost died 2017, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, hit by a kid driving with no lights on. And there was a death in 2015, about 100 yards north of that intersection. I have several problems with it, but I have to say that the professionalism of Mr. Hamilton, who took time out of his day, and Mr. Kishnick, who actually called me on a Saturday and essentially took responsibility, for the not being late. He explained the reasons why. I know I don't have time, but I really want to have a dialogue with anybody who cares, because right now, I got to be honest with you, I don't think too many people care. Every day that there is not going to be a fix increases the chances of injury, and some more people are going to die. It's horrible. It is very dark. And the reason I was given that there was not a light given is ridiculous. The subdivision, it is up to the developer to put the light in. There was the John R. project, fine, don't put it in. City of Troy approves it. Okay, but then in 2014 it gets delayed another, 4 years? Well, so 4 years, we don't have safe lighting, okay? So in that situation, what I don't understand is if there's a situation where a project is delayed.
Mr. McBride?
What?
Your 3 minutes are up, but I'm going to ask to suspend the rules and allow you to speak further. Could you do it for 1 more minute?
You can give me 2 minutes.
I'll give you 1 more minute.
How about 2 minutes?
How about 1 more minute?
You could return my call. All right. 1 minute this. So listen, my situation is, this is my minute, so I get to talk.
Hold on, I have to take care of some procedures here, okay? I'm going to suspend the rules and allow Mr. McBride to speak for 1 more minute.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we allow Mr. McBride to speak for 1 more minute. Any discussion on that? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you for...
Mr. Kishnick was kind enough to offer a temporary fix, saying that he would contact DTE and try to get some sort of temporary light. This whole conversation started December 14th, now January 8th. And nothing has happened. The situation, I believe, is only going to become more dangerous, as I have previously alluded to. I do have a fix. I took 2 pictures. I emailed them to selected people here, as you, Mayor. There are 2 utility poles directly adjacent to Bridgewater Estates entrance that have power junction boxes. Just get an aluminum arm, throw a light on there, and let's just get the thing lit up, okay? Yes, it may be at some cost, but, paying $9,000 a year in taxes, I think somehow we can afford it, okay? The city can afford it. So, yes, I have a lot more to say about this. You were kind enough to give me that, and I appreciate it. So please contact me. I have sent you emails. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Next, I'll call on Aaron Ladd, Troy resident, who wishes to speak this evening. Good evening, Aaron.
Yeah, good evening. First, I want to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody, and congratulations, Dave. Big win, cool stuff. I want to talk about how we want to be viewed here in the city of Troy. First, I want to start out by saying that I came across a news story on the news TV about a man who was hit in a run, hit by 3 cars. He was riding on the road. Now, I want to preface this with with that, so we all know that. And I want to point out that that while riding the 16-mile corridor here and checking out the new city center, which is really cool. I think that's a really cool thing going in. So I'm riding the sidewalks, and one of the things that I noticed along the 16-mile corridor is there's lots of footsteps that cross the median. And I figured, hey, I may as well go out there and take some photos of these footpaths and make a report. I didn't point out, I wish I would have, for the people that are interested in what I do. I'm a blogger, I'm a web developer. And one of the things that I've gotten into is the Troy Trails and Pathway developments. So I took some of my skills in web developing, and I put them into developing the trails and pathways in Troy. Now I want to say that what I'm doing here is making a report of the people that cross 16 Mile and having better ways to cross 16 Mile. I know of Maggie Hughes with the Trails and Pathways. She's working with the Move Across Troy initiative. And the main thing I want to point out here today, and I don't know if you or the council is the people to present it to, but since it's right out front here in front of your offices here, I thought I'd point it out, is that the sidewalks that go underneath the viaduct are not plowed whatsoever, and I think it would be maybe your duty to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. It's an opportunity for council or administration to respond. Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple quick things. Mr. McBride, I don't think any of us have received your emails. I saw a lot of heads saying, not me. I don't know if you sent pictures. Maybe Councilman Hamilton has.
I did, yeah.
But you can't speak back. I'm sorry, not to be. But if you can't talk.
This is not
a one-way conversation. I'm sorry. So I'm just saying, if you could resend them, or maybe send them individually to us. Okay, sir. I don't want to be the rule enforcer. That's your job, Mayor. But no. I also called you back and left you a voicemail after you called me. I haven't spoken with you, so if you want to call me, we can talk anytime. Before I finish, so I appreciate that. I want to find out from Mr. Kishnick if you could just give a little explanation from the city's perspective, if you can speak on that. But before we do that, I just want to say to Aaron, thank you for coming. I think that that's a very important thing to discuss and look at. I know the Move Across Troy really focused on it. We have the crossing across 16 Mile going in down closer to John R. That's our first big one, and I know that that's something we're looking at. I also have to say, I saw you walk in and you're close, and I thought, you're crazy to be out there riding in this weather. And so be safe out there. I know. And thank you for the work you do on the web development for the Trails and Pathways. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's really great stuff, and you're a big advocate for that, so thank you for that. But be safe out there, and we will look at that. But back to Mr. McBride's issue. I'm not fully understanding, because of his limited time frame to speak, if the city can do something, if we're really delaying it by years and years and years, or if there's another side of that, if you could explain.
Well, number one, Councilmember Hamilton said he would send me the pictures and I will get them to the rest of council.
Right, thank you.
I was contacted originally by Mr. McBride with his email and sent it to Kurt Bovenseep and Mike Fahalik in the Streets Division, and I think Bill Hootery has also talked about the John R. Part of it. So we'll put a full report together and give it to council with Kurt Bovenseep and Bill Hootery, and we'll get it to council. And I know we want to work with Mr. McBride. We want to get this done. I know we're working with DTE is the last email I saw, which, I mean, it's not an excuse to sit up here and say we're working with DTE, but it's not always the easiest and it's not always the fastest. So we'll stay on it because he raises a good point, and safety's a concern of ours, as it is with him, and we can't wait 4 more years. I mean, I wasn't aware of that, right, until this issue came up, but we can't continue waiting. So,
thank you.
Could I say one more thing, if it's okay?
Sure.
I'd love to take credit for all the assistance given to Mr. McBride, but that was actually Kurt Bovenseep. So I have to give credit where credit's due.
Sorry.
No, I should have never clarified, actually. No, so anyways, thank you. I did get the first one, but turn it over to Kurt and Bill, and I know they're working with Mr. McBride, and it is, I mean, it's maybe as early as today I saw something, maybe, or it was Friday. Yes, that's right.
Mr. McBride, if you could just have a conversation with the city manager after the meeting. It sounds to me like we're willing to assist if we can. As Councilman Baker indicated, I never got any photos from you. I've never gotten anything from you. So if you want to just communicate with City Manager Kishmick, I'm sure that we can work as hard as we can to try to resolve this. So thank you. As far as Aaron makes up, maybe if Kurt could just speak about whose responsibility it is to remove the snow under the viaduct on I-75, under I-75.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is owned by MDOT, maintained by Oakland County. 16-mile Big Beaver is a county road. It is under the county jurisdiction. However, we do plow many of those spots, including the crossovers on Big Beaver, when we receive a snowfall greater than 3 inches. Those viaducts and crosswalks were plowed in the last snow when we were in subdivisions. However, they were not plowed during last night's snowfall or the one before because the accumulations did not reach 3 inches.
Thank you. Any comments from council regarding public comment? There are no council referrals this evening, so we will move to council comments. Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to remind everybody that this Saturday, January 13th, from 11 to 1 at the Troy Public Library, we'll be having the first of the new series of Civic Center conversations. As our flyer states, this is your opportunity to give feedback to city administration regarding the Civic Center plan. My understanding is that it will be a very collaborative experience, allowing lots of opportunity for you to provide comments written and really be involved in the process and your thoughts. And so we encourage you to come out to the library on this Saturday between 11 and 1 to share your opinions and thoughts. We've had a lot of conversations about it, but we know it's important for the community to be very vigorously involved at this point. And if you can't make it this Saturday, there will be one at the Community Center on Wednesday, January 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. Same format, I believe. If you have any questions, please contact Kelly Molinar at 248-524-3327. Or visit the troymi.gov website for more information. But please be there if you have concerns or thoughts or want to provide input. This is the opportunities, one of the opportunities we're giving the residents of the city to do so. So it's very valuable to hear your thoughts and get your feedback. And if I can just take a personal moment, today's my oldest daughter's 11th birthday, and I wouldn't normally mention that, but I'm at a council meeting while she's at home, hopefully going to bed because she has school in the morning. But happy birthday, Arda, and Mom and I love you very much, and we're very proud of you, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoderick.
Related to the Civic Center conversations, one of the favorite topics of the community has also been kind of dovetailing it is the green space discussion that we've been having. Folks might remember we did have a study session on both these topics, and out of that study session we talked about the value of having a green space subcommittee, advisory committee of our Parks and Rec committee, and that meeting will be occurring this Thursday at 6 o'clock in the boardroom here in City Hall. There have been folks that have contacted us interested in being on the advisory committee. Of course, members of the public are also welcome to attend, watch, observe, and be part of the dialogue. I think we had a very constructive, open study session on this, very frank dialogue, and invite the community to join with us. So we move forward in a very fact-based, there's been great fact gathering that the city staff did for us in terms of identifying green space in the city, and let's go forward constructively. I'm really looking forward to what these conversations yield. We don't know what they'll yield. We don't have an agenda, a plan on this. We just knew that the community was hungry to talk about green space and look at it. You heard some of it tonight with specific decision tonight, the cluster ordinance and the tree preservation that we've already put in place. Clearly, there might be opportunity for us to be doing more, and I think it's an exciting time to be participating. And I thank the staff for being so open and willing to do it.
Contact people like you for...
Yeah, you can contact members of council if you're interested in being on the advisory team. We welcome it, and appreciate the staff stepping forward to see this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. Any council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
As a reminder, the Troy Public Library does have an endowment fund, and its goal for this is to reach $100,000. And to that, the Sedona Tap House has chosen the Troy Public Library Endowment Fund as its January charity. So you can help support the Troy Public Library Endowment Fund during Sedona Tap House's January Steak Night Out for charity starting January 1st, continuing through all Mondays in January, lunch or dinner. You get an 8-ounce Black Angus flat iron steak for only $7, normally an $18.99 price, and Sedona will donate one of those $7 to help support the Troy Endowment Fund. Now, it is an in-house dining opportunity, and you do need to purchase a beverage to go with it, but not only will you be helping the Troy Public Library out, you will be getting a fantastic meal at an extremely low price. So I encourage you to go out on Mondays to Sedona Tap House and help out your community.
Thank you. I took advantage of that this evening. Any comments from council? Any comments from council regarding the reports this evening that are in the agenda packet? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session this evening, so thank you for coming this evening. We are adjourned.